All right, welcome back. It's the Rock Forever, taking you around the world, taking you up into the middle of California here in the Valley. We are talking to a band leader, a recording engineer, producer, all around musician. Please welcome Trevor Church. How are you?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, doing great, man. I see that you're very aggressive out there. You've got your group Haunt,
Yeah,
and some other groups, and you're
yeah,
looking to get on the road and take this music to the people. Give us a little bit of background. I know your father, is a musician. How did
yeah.
at what age did you start playing, and how did it progress to you wanting to do this like you're doing now?
Well, I think I got my first guitar and drum set really young because obviously my dad's a musician, so it was I think it was kind of pushed upon me to do something musical, and I didn't really take it seriously until I was like, really, I think it was when I started realizing like, oh, I could play guitar because my hands were small, when you're a little kid, it's kind of tough. So I didn't really focus on that much. I always like kind of fiddle faddled and watched my dad and went to studios, and I was always at band practices and things. So I mean, I was always around it, but I didn't really get into my first band until I was in high school, and even then, I didn't really take it that serious because I was really into skateboarding, and it was just kind of hard to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, and then. And plus, like I grew up in a small town, so there wasn't like a lot of stuff going on that made that you could make it a reality. Like the high school band, we just played cover songs, played punk songs, played some metal songs and stuff just for fun. But I really started like writing my own music when I was around like 17. I was like messing around with like a bunch of punk music, and I had met this dude out in Stockton named Matt Egan, and he and I started like what would be my first serious band called Scattered Fall. So I was like 18, 19 when I actually decided like, all right, I'm going to be in bands. That was the moment when I was like, I'm going to be in bands. You know what I mean? Up until that point, it didn't really seem like something that was tangible, like living where I lived. I actually, when I had to drive to have band rehearsal and write music with this dude, I was like 40 minutes away. So it was a labor of love in a lot of ways from the beginning, because it wasn't easy because I didn't live in a major city. You know what I mean?
Sure. Now, after the trials and tribulations of that band around those times, at what point did you realize, all right, it's time to form, my greatest group? I'm going to give my best effort, and you created Haunt. What was your thoughts, and how did that all come together?
I had always beforehand, I never really thought of myself as a leader of a band. I knew that I could write music, and I had some talent in that. I knew that, like, you know what I mean? If you're a musician, right out the bat, like, okay, I can write songs. Like, it's not that hard for me. So you have to have something there that, some natural ability. So that was God given. And then it really didn't click for me for many years because I kept trying to be in other people's bands. And I was an open door as far as genres. I wasn't really genre specific. I wanted to be in a band with somebody who I thought had talents and skills and like passion for music. So even though my musical taste was mainly more aggressive music, I played in some indie rock bands and just things just because I didn't want to be the leader. I thought maybe, a lot of the times I thought like maybe my influences will shine through as the bands, develop more, but that usually didn't happen. So I moved to Los Angeles for a couple years. I had this girlfriend that was going to school down there, And I went down there, and I must have auditioned for like 25 bands. And at the time, I was really, really into Def Leppard, and Black Sabbath, Megadeth, Thin Lizzy. Those are like the four bands that they're kind of, you know, they're all similar bands, but they're like different extremes, you know. But those bands were really speaking to me, and I was like, man, there has to be somebody out there that likes this, you know. And this was in like early 2000s, mind you. So there wasn't, I didn't realize at the time that wasn't really a thing, and there wasn't very many like-minded people. I couldn't find them anyways. So I had a cousin that lived here in Fresno, and we had, you know, messed around in some bands previously, but nothing really ever took off because I was like not really living here. I was still living in different places along the valley, and like Stockton. I'm from Valley Springs originally, so like Calaveras County area. Nobody even knows where that is. You'd have to look it up on a map, seriously. But yeah, LA didn't work. I came to Fresno, and the idea was to start a band with my cousin, and no joke, like he and I had played music together our whole lives, obviously, because we're cousins and stuff, and we do family jams at, you know, Thanksgiving, and we had a lot in common. And he was on board with the idea of like, hey, let's do old school shit, like fuck all this like trying to be modern hipster shit. Like we want to do something classic of nature, you know. And literally 2 weeks after I moved here, he died in an accident. And at that point, it kind of like derailed me a lot. I started drinking a lot, and my musical desires they were there, but they had faded very hard, because it was hard to pull myself out of that. And I had come up with this band named Beastmaker, and I still had one friend here in town, a couple friends, and we tried to do it a few different times, calling it Beastmaker, and it didn't work. But one of the main dudes that was in Beastmaker with me, Andy Soldati, kind of stayed by my side. He was always doing other musical projects here in Fresno, right? And I've been in Fresno this is the longest I've lived anywhere, basically, at this point in time in my life. So I'd say I'm a Fresnan now. But he was in bands. He was always trying to get me in bands with him. And I just, like I said, like the musical flame kind of like withered, because like I developed a slight drinking problem, because it was really hard for me to deal with my cousin's death. And then just like my dreams and hopes and goals kind of seemed shattered. And, you know, it kind of sounds like the pity party right now, but it's like real. I mean, I don't know if anybody like, you know, they'd be listening, if you lost, you know, your best friend and, you know, and family member on the planet, you know, it really doesn't do you any good. You know,
yeah, he was like your co-pilot. Now all of a sudden,
he was my co-pilot.
You
got to
fly the plane yourself, and
yeah, I mean, like my life was forever changed that day. To this day, I am not who I was then. You know, like it was a path of a lot of resistance for me after that, because, like I said, like there was a lot of me trying to drown out my emotions, but yet I still really loved music, and I was going to shows, finding bands and stuff. But it would be hard to say now, but at one point in time, during this time, I think I was around 26 or 25 when this happened. So I went to this 3 years of just darkness, just whiskey drinking and forgetting everything. I actually didn't even have an amp like anymore at this point in time. And I'd kind of like, I was like I'd play guitar like after I'd get off work or something and listen to records, you know, just, you know, just because I liked it, you know what I mean? It's something I always have done, you know, played, but taking it as something as serious, I didn't. And then one day I woke up from a drunken stupor. I had like thrown up all over my bed, all over myself, and I like looked in the bathroom. I threw up in the bathroom too. I basically threw up all over my apartment. Like it was like a fucking war zone. Like, and I didn't even remember how I got home. And then it's like, I drove home. I was like, fuck, you know, I just was not in a good place. I was like, if you don't kill yourself, you're gonna fucking die from drinking. Like you have two outcomes here, because it was just a road of self-destruction. And that day I decided that I was gonna quit drinking. And so that path started, and then it's strange. My dad's brother, Bob Church, he's always done cover bands in Fresno. They were looking for a bass player, and I joined them. And that was the first time I had been on a stage playing in front of anybody and in front of people since probably I was like 24 years old. And by this time I was, well, not 24, like 25, like I said, around the time my cousin died is like when, you know, I stopped playing live. Well, I did play, and you know what? I did play some gigs as Beastmaker with some of the dudes that I was doing, but we only did a couple shows before I went into a self-destructive mode and couldn't really be I was not dependable. Like you couldn't depend on me to have a band practice. You couldn't depend on me for very much at all, other than me going to work and paying my rent. That's about the only thing I fucking thought about. I was like, I have to have a place to live. I have to have a job. So I just, like, I was a functioning major alcoholic. Like I was drinking every fucking day, every day. And if I wasn't drinking, it was because I was so hungover I couldn't get out of bed. So I had to nurse myself out of the hangover. That was kind of my life. It was really dark, but I quit drinking. It's been 12 years now since I've drank alcohol.
Congratulations.
Almost 12 years. It'll be 12 years this year, but I'm always one to jump ahead, you know? But yeah, thank you. And at that point, when I started playing with my uncle, I was like, cool. And I was getting paid, because, you know, cover bands pay a lot more than being in an original band for the most part, unless you've made it. And I was like, cool. And I started buying gear again. You know, that was huge, because I was like, this isn't money that I need. You know, like I was making enough money to pay my bills and stuff. So I was looking at it, you know, the money I was getting from gigs. I was like, this is music money. Like I need to reinvest in everything. Like I was using a fucking amp that my uncle's buddy just like had left at his jam room. So, I mean, I didn't even have proper gear playing with them. And plus I was playing bass, which isn't really my instrument of choice, but I've always been a fan of playing multiple instruments. Like I said, when I was a little kid, I had a drum set. So I played drums. I played everything because I had instruments around. But anyway, long story short on that, to get to, you know, up to this point, my uncle fired me eventually because I didn't really like this winery that they'd play. And we were on this like local television show, and they asked me the television person, at the TV host, asked me, what do you think of Apcal Winery? And I was like, it's okay. And dude, that it's okay rained down on me in this town like you wouldn't believe. First off, my uncle called me and he was irate because the owner of Apcal apparently was watching the show and was super pissed that I said his place was okay. He didn't, you know, this guy doesn't know me. He doesn't know that like I'm a recovering alcoholic and I lost my best fucking friend in the world to drinking. And not only, I mean, my story goes way harder than this, but like, that's not the first time tragedy had struck me because of alcohol. And I, you know, like maybe later somebody will read about me or find an older podcast or so, and they can, you know, I'm pretty open about my life and the things that have happened in it. But anyway, I got fired, and what that really did, I was at that point, I was like, man, I'm going to be missing out on like $500-600 a month. That was just fun money. So I went back to Andy Saldati, the dude I was like had the Beastmaker bands with before, and it was like, hey, let's try this again, like, but let's do Black Sabbath tribute songs, and I'll get us into some of the bars in town, and we can just make money playing like classic rock stuff. But let's start with Black Sabbath. Well, we started and we sucked hella bad. It was fucking awful. It was some of the worst sounding shit I had ever heard in my life. I was like, we tried doing Into the Void, and it was like a fucking just can I swear? I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all right. Okay. And it was just awful. But it felt good to be playing with somebody, and especially a friend that I was close to. And I was just like, you know what? I was like, why don't we just like jam? Like I was like, let's try to like, live in the spirit of that jam era of heavy metal, which would be like the Black Sabbath stuff, And so I started like fucking with that, and we started getting a couple tunes, and we were like, all right, this isn't too bad. And then we searched for a bass player. It was very difficult. And we ended up with a guitar player on bass. And he ended up joining the band. We started playing a couple gigs, and it was supposed to just be for fun for the summer because he was like guitar player, not a bass player. But then we decided to go to this studio up in the mountains and try to record some demos. And it did not go well. Like, it wasn't sounding good. Like, we weren't tight. Like, there's just a lot of holes in it. And I've always kind of like fiddle faddle. I've always had 4-track recorders. And like, when computers started having the ability to record, I started, buying stuff like that. Like I said, I've always kind of been, like into music. So it's like, I've always had stuff at my hands, at my fingertips. And I was like, I had just bought like this new, more fancy interface. It was like the most I'd ever spent on a computer interface to record music. I bought an Apogee Quartet, it's called. And it was like pretty high end for home recording from what I had seen other people doing in their homes. And I had just was like, all right, I'm going to buy some mics. And I bought some mics. Because the recording at this studio, it wasn't coming together. And I was like, I got to figure out how to like prepare for this better. Like, how do you prepare to have like a tight sounding album? And I was writing a bunch of stuff in this room and like recording it myself. And so I took like the spirit of what we were doing and kind of just brought it into a solo world. And I had all my vintage, at this time, I had a bunch of vintage horror movie posters in this bedroom that I turned into a little home recording studio. And there was this specific image that always comes in my mind, and it like sparked my musical career even, is this French movie poster for the movie Dr. Phibes with Vincent Price. And it's like faces in yellow and there's like blood dripping down it. And I was like, and one day I just like put a Beastmaker like logo on it. And I was like, this is excellent. And I had written this song called You Must Sin. And I put You Must Sin under it in this like old English, like it just looked really like 70s metal. And it like looked, like somebody had just kind of pasted it together. So it was, I was vibing it really, really hard. And I told the dudes, I was like, look, we got these songs. I was like, I got some songs. Let's give it one more shot. Let's try to record. But I was like, let's just record it here and let it be lo-fi. Cause at the time I was really like into the lo-fi garage stuff, like rare, obscure, where it just didn't sound great. And I was like, I don't care. We already tried to go to a studio, and this polished production style obviously is too much for us. We need to figure something out that works. And so, so we recorded an EP as Beastmaker. It was the first recording I'd really gotten finished in years, and especially on a level where I was like, gonna be, I'm leading the show now, mind you. I'm finally like prepared to step up as you know, a leader and front man. And I put it out on Bandcamp, and I had just heard of this Bandcamp thing. And I was like, this is cool. Like, you could like put your music up here, you could sell it or put it for free download or whatever. And I had it up for free, I think, for a while. And like a bunch of people were buying it. And I was like, what the fuck? I was blown away. I was like, hell of people are buying this right now. What happened? And like, so, you know, there was some people, local dudes, my friend Anthony Trujillo, he knew a bunch of people that are into horror movies and stuff. And that's kind of, like I said, like the whole, like the inspiration of what became my first real band that toured, and it was led by me, Beastmaker. That EP got me a record deal with Rise Above Records literally 2 weeks after I did it. We hadn't even played a show with these songs yet. Like nothing. We were green as fuck. We still joke. We were like, we had a record deal before we had a fucking t-shirt. You know what I mean? We hadn't even played out of town. So it was when it happened, it was like, well, now we actually have to really be a band, because, you know, a lot of people don't get that kind of luck. A lot, you know, there's a lot of grind, even though my grind was heavy to that point. I mean, it wasn't like my dues weren't paid. I just had hit I finally hit like some sort of lucky stride where it was like I just did something that I was passionate about and somebody took notice. And when I talked to Lee Dorian, the owner of Rise Above, and I asked him like, well, do you want us to go record in a real studio? Because I was like, I recorded this in my basement, or not my basement, my bedroom. Might as well have been a basement. You know, it's always a dungeon everywhere I'm at, you know, usually it's like no windows. But anyway, he was like, no, it sounded cool, man. He's like, I liked this. He's like, it sounded old. And I was like, cool. And he's like, you have more songs? I was like, I got a ton of songs. And he's like, send me a few more songs of what you're working on. And you know, I sent him a few more, and he's like, great. He's like, put it together. And he sent me some money to do the record. And what I did with that money is since he seemed to believe in what I, you know, like kind of the self-production thing, I decided to spend that money on equipment, you know, better microphones, better interface. I already had a good computer. So, you know, like the computer was there. I had to get some good monitors and stuff. So I spent the entire budget, like, you know, buying stuff. And we put out a record called Lucis Naturae, which means freak of nature in Latin, in 2015 on Rise Above Records. And they flew us out to Europe, and we did our first tour ever. And with this band Blood Ceremony, excellent band from Canada. We played the Roadburn Music Festival in Tilburg in the Netherlands, which really helped put us on to any, you know, it gave us some clout to be on such a, you know, rad, like we were on like one of the main stages. It was crazy. So it was like a really big deal. Plus we had this record out that was getting some hype, because Rise Above Records kind of has this prestige to it in doom metal, and people that listen to doom metal generally, like, you know, if it's on Rise Above, they're gonna at least give it a chance. And so I did that for a few years, traveled about and everything, but I started realizing like my better potential was not going to be in doom metal, and I didn't want to be so pigeonholed into genre specifics, and wanted to be free to kind of just write whatever I wanted to write, however I wanted to write. And so I came up with this song called Luminous Eyes in 2017. And I didn't really think about wanting to start another band or anything at the time. I was like, I'm going to just see if this has, like, I had a buddy that was doing all my graphic design for Beastmaker at this time, that was doing the style that I already was, you know, had that first, like I said, that first cover art that I did, the Beastmaker logo, blood dripping, Vincent Price's face on it with the "You Must Sin" under it. We kind of just, that's been the style since day one. I've always done graphic design. And but I found somebody that was talented and had more skill than me on the computer to kind of take over my vision. And I found that in Paul Abrin from Bronca Studio in Spain. And he came up with the Haunt logo, and I had showed him Luminous Eyes, and he even was like, he's like, this is the band. He's like, you need to go do this. And he was kind of the first person to really like hear it and be in you know, go and kind of give me like he gave me the thumbs up, you know, and gave me this sick ass logo. And he did a really great retro looking 70s heavy metal looking album cover with these eyes in space, you know, we call it Luminous Eyes. It was like perfect. It was like this, like, it was like the planets aligned for it, really. And then I did the same thing. I put it on Bandcamp, except this time I already had a little bit of notoriety from Beastmaker. We had just got off the tour with Zach Wild's Zach Sabbath project, and we had done a full US tour with them. So it wasn't like Beastmaker was doing horrible, but like, again, like I said, the artistic side was kind of plaguing me. And I was way more now like focused on putting out this Luminous Eyes thing. And Fenriz from the band Dark Throne has a blog called Album of the Week. And he put me up as #1 album of the week that week. And I made more money that day than I ever had made money in music in my entire life. Like, I was like, holy shit, like, you could actually, you know, and I was touring and doing stuff, but, you know, like, that kind of thing costs a lot of money to do. And there's not really any, you know, money left over. It's kind of like your passion project for years. And I was like, wow, I was like, this is really taking off. And then so Beastmaker we were in Europe, and I was just getting bombarded by Shadow Kingdom Records at this time. He really wanted to put Luminous Eyes out on vinyl. And I told him, no, I don't want to be on a record label anymore. I don't like being told what to do. I was like, I want to control everything. I was like, I don't, you know, because like with Beastmaker, I saw that like the record label was going to tie me down. They were going to choose when things were released. And I wanted just to release as much music as possible, because I just hadn't felt like I was peaking musically. And I didn't think being on a label would allow that ever, because of the amount of stuff that I wanted to write and do write. But anyway, Fenriz gave me some big love. I owe a lot to him on that. And I've never even met the guy. I did send him a message. I said, thank you. He never wrote back. So it's kind of funny, you know, like how that works, you know, right? The guy that like literally like helped launch my career as Haunt, I sent him like a thank you on Facebook Messenger, and I never get a reply. You know, like it's pretty funny. It's ironic in a lot of ways. But anyway, that is how Haunt began. And after that, it basically killed Beastmaker. And, you know, obviously, you know, I did a couple records as Beastmaker on Rise Above Records, which allowed me some money to invest in a studio. And at my house, me and my wife had bought a house in we were like, you need somewhere to work. She knew I needed somewhere to work instead of a bedroom. And so the bedroom gone, you know, and now I have like a full, like I said, it's like we converted this garage into like it's a pretty big garage, so it's pretty nice. And then I got really lucky when we moved in here. My friend that owns this label called Writing Easy, he got me a job doing songs for Red Bull. And so I did like 10 songs for Red Bull and got paid a bunch of money, and I bought a bunch of gear. And that really is like, that's how the recording engineering thing happened. I don't even really like to call myself a recording engineer, because like, I don't, you know, a lot of time I'm self-taught. So it's like, I'm still evolving on that, you know, like I've read hella books. I've read, you know, I've watched every tutorial. I have friends that are engineers that I've talked to on the phone that I look up to, and, you know, they just help me on my gear purchases, or like, oh, do this, do that, you know, they kind of try to help me. And I always, you know, I always kind of really looked at the DIY thing as like such a great way to go about things. You're kind of a jack of all trades, master at none, though, is the only problem with that, because you can't really dedicate yourself 100% to just one thing. You're just like, you know, like I said, I do drums, bass, guitar, vocals, record, mix, master. I do manufacturing. I do the online store. I do all the social media. I plan out most of the tours. I have a booking agent, but I already have all the bands in mind usually that I want to go out with. So, and I'm a dad. So, I mean, it's kind of hectic, you know? And so I just kind of try to do the best I can. But the good thing is like, I'm not reliant on anybody. And that's a huge like setback for a lot of people in the music world. And I'm sure a lot of musicians would agree with me, is being reliant on others to do things can be one of the most stifling parts of being a musician. I don't suffer from that, but I mean, but it does suffer in other areas, you know?
Yeah, no, it's the worst thing in the world is to sit there and wait for a phone call, wait for a green light, wait for the word, you know, to be self-sufficient and just move with your gut. You know what people like, and you know what you do best. So yeah, tell us about your next tour. What's going on with that?
It'll be the first tour since the pandemic emerged. In 2020, I was really hitting a highlight with Haunt in Europe, and you know, just to come home. Luckily, we did get to do a tour in 2020, but we're going to be doing we've been playing shows now. I have a new live band though. But we started playing shows a few months back, and it was going good. And I was like, you know what, it's, you know, like, let's see if this tour will happen. I had already talked to the band. So we're going out with this band called TREVOR from Canada. Amazing old school heavy metal band. Very Maiden-esque. So if you're into Iron Maiden, they definitely encapsulate that spirit. And then there's a Swedish band called Screamer, who their thing is they have a sticker, a bumper sticker. When I did a tour with them in Europe in 2019, I thought it was hilarious. It said, "Not reinventing the wheel since 2016," or something ridiculous like that. So they're a band that's not reinventing the wheel, but they play old school heavy metal, and they're very good. And then a band that I helped produce, and I engineered their record, Saber, and I put them out on my label, Church Recordings. Even though I'm not really doing other bands, it's not something I don't really have the time. So they are looking for a label, and they're an amazing band. So if anybody, you know, hears this and they have a heavy metal label, check out Saber. They're fantastic. They really have that Sunset Strip glam metal look down to a T. It's like Motley Crue, and but speed metal. You know, it's way faster and more aggressive, but still has a lot of sass to it. So they kind of have that Sunset thing, but at the same time, they can get gnarly. We're gonna be doing, I think, like 25 or 23 shows, starting in California, or starting in Oregon, going up into Canada, and then drifting through the States down to Texas, where we play the Hell's Heroes Festival in Houston, which is an amazing festival with tons of great bands. It's a 2-day festival. And then we come back, and it's going to be the first tour since the pandemic, and I'm pretty excited to get back out there. It's going to be an exciting tour, especially with having it's a real international tour. You have 2 bands from California, 1 band from Vancouver, or I'm sorry, like Alberta, I think they're from, Canada, and then have a Swedish band. You know, like, that's killer. I was like, this is gonna, you know, as long as things don't get fucking crazy, you know, like the times are still kind of questionable, but I don't think venues are going to be like closing anymore. But if you get COVID or something, you generally have to like cancel a show and shit. I don't know. I'm just hoping none of that really happens. But that's just the world we're living in right now. You can't fucking really.
You gotta take some chances, but also be cautious.
Well, you got,
and be ready for a backup plan in case, like you say, you might lose a player who can sit in for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those scenarios. It's like, you don't know, but if you don't do it, if you don't go book a tour and try to play it, I mean, worst case scenario is nobody gets COVID. Worst case scenario, one person gets COVID, they isolate or you just send them home and somebody fills in. You know, it's like, that's kind of the beauty of this tour, is a lot of us were already friends. I've toured with Screamer before. Like I said, I engineered and produced Saber. So if anybody needed to step up, there's there's territory to, people can learn the music fast enough to the only person that can't really get sick is the singers. You know, the singers can't be replaced that easily, but everybody else can, hopefully it just doesn't go that road. Yeah,
you fill in the gaps. Now, where's the best place on social media or online people can go for news about Haunt and, of course, the tour?
Instagram, RocksTheNation is the screen name, username, and that's me officially. The best place to listen to the music is hauntthenation.bandcamp.com. Basically, if you look up Haunt the Nation anywhere, that's the legitimate area of where I am, and how to find me or send me messages or just find out more information about Haunt. Of course, Spotify and all that too, we're on there and stuff.
Yeah. Well, sounds great. Our special guest has been Trevor Church, and he is the head of Church Recordings, and he's got the studio there in Fresno and taking the band to the people. What a pleasure, man, helping get the word out. We want to chart your progress and success and follow up with you down the road, man. I see man. You got music in your heart, and we can't wait to see it live. So best of luck on new recordings and everything else, man. We'll back you up. Thanks, Trevor.
Right on, man. Later. Thanks, everybody.